Chapter 11. The God with Two Faces. Alec? Bond could not believe it at first. He went cold and wanted to vomit, yet his stunned disbelief was gradually turning to anger. He did not need to even ask the question, for he had known Alec Trevelyan as friend and colleague all his active life. Yes. The familiar voice was only slightly slurred by the defect on the left of his mouth. Yes, James. I'm back from the dead. I'm not just one of those anonymous crosses on the memorial wall at the SIS headquarters. Does that wall still exist in the new building? He stopped, as though waiting for a response. What's the matter, James? No glib remark, no pithy comeback. You used to be famous for your one-liners. I've got a one-worder for you, Alec. Novel. Go ahead. Why? Why? Very droll, James. Why? Because I speak the language well. That do you? No. I think I deserve a decent answer. Okay. How about going out, risking life and limb, bombing around the world, putting your life on the line, then finally ending up on the scrap heap? It happens to everybody, Alec. We're no different from soldiers, civil servants. Name any trade, and you come to the same answer. So you think it's okay just to win a war, come home and hear the words, "Well done, chaps. You did a good job, but times have changed. Goodbye." You think that's fair? Nobody has ever said life is fair. Quite. That's it. I went missing because I saw there was no future as a worker ant. I went freelance. You went freelance, even though you'd taken a pledge. To what? Queen and country? It was the job we promised to do. Well done, James. Yes, we had made promises, but the world's changed. I happened to move on more or less just in time. The world always changes. That's part of life and part of the job. Alec laughed, bitter with a trace of biblical wormwood and gall. Part of the job. Risk everything and end up with nothing. Depends on what you mean by nothing, Alec. The world's in constant change. Wars come and go. At the moment, it looks as though our main old enemy has gone, but it's left chaos behind. In my job, which used to be your job as well, there's more to do now than at any time. Parts of the old Russian Empire are crumbling. There are new terrors. And where there are new terrors, we are most needed. Not in my book, James. I'm happy being a freelance. Thank you very much. You'd rather cause the chaos than try to stop it? Bond raised his hand, and the pistol came up with it. Oh, James, put that pea-shooter away. Do you really think that I haven't anticipated your every move? He turned and began to walk away. The man, Bond considered, had gone too far to be brought back. The explosion? Oromov's bullet? Whatever had happened after the operation in the 80s. I trusted you, he said aloud. James, don't be so bloody melodramatic. I always took you for a realist. Trevelyan turned back, coming closer. "Trust?" he asked, mocking Bond's tone. Trust's disappeared, gone, dropped out of the dictionary. The accountants have taken over, or hadn't you noticed? Today's dictator is tomorrow's diplomat. The bomb thrower and terrorist now catch the Nobel Prize. It's all money. We're stuck in the slough of despond, which goes under a new name. Free market morality. It's a morality where your friends come and go as quickly as the next bus in Regent Street or Fifth Avenue. He stopped, obviously trying to let his view of life sink in. So, how did the SIS vetting miss the fact that your parents were Lienz Cossacks? That in itself made you a security risk. They knew, James. They knew everything. They simply thought I was too young to remember. We're both orphans. Did you ever think about how the service prefers orphans? The SIS likes to become your family. Your own parents had the luxury of dying in a climbing accident. Mine survived one of the most treacherous acts perpetrated in the name of the British government. They survived Stalin's death squads, but my father couldn't live with himself, or let my mother live with it. The SIS really thought I would never remember what had happened, so it became a nice little irony. The son went to work for the government whose betrayal caused his father to murder his mother, then take his own life. But I always remembered James. Even when I was being utterly loyal, I never forgot a thing. Bond nodded. Hence Janus. Well named, Alec. Janus, the two-faced Roman god, come to life. Trevelyan's hand came up to the damaged left side of his face. Whether by accident or design, he turned so that Bond could see the right profile without blemish. Then his left, a scarred and hideous caricature. It wasn't God who gave me this face. It was you, James. You set a timer for 1 minute. And friend Oramov shot you before the time was up. What did he offer you, Alec? A seat on the right hand of God? Am I supposed to feel sorry for doing what was necessary? No, James. No, you're supposed to die for me. They stood looking at each other, as though still in the grip of a battle of wills. Then Bond caught a movement to his right, and realized that it was a pencil-thin dot of red light, crawling from his shoulder to his face, then down to his chest. A laser sight. Someone, hidden among the grotesque pile of debris, had him literally in his sights. Trevelyan turned away again, stopped after 3 paces, and spoke over his shoulder. I did think of asking you to join our little scheme, James. But somehow I knew your loyalty would always be to government orders, and not to friends. He disappeared into the darkness, and Bond moved, falling flat, firing into the darkness, rolling to the right, then jumping up, running again, searching for cover. But the pinpoint of light stayed on him. From somewhere unseen, a sniper squeezed his trigger. There was a hiss, like lightning cracking through the air, streaking towards him. He felt a huge blow on his chest, knew somehow that he had been hit by a long-range and very powerful stun gun. Once more, that day, his world went suddenly black, and his mind was switched off as though someone had thrown a lever, cutting off all thoughts and senses. The last thing he registered was the smell of burning. He was being banged hard and regularly in the back. Someone was calling to him. A woman, her speech accented. He could not move or open his eyes, and his chest felt as though a mule had kicked him. He tried to retreat into sleep. After all, being asleep was being safe, and he had no desire to face anything unsafe. "Wake up! Wake up, mister! Sir, wake up! Please, wake up!" Definitely a Russian accent, and she seemed to be pounding on his back. Finally, he struggled to the surface and found himself returning to a very alien world. He sat in a cockpit. Rows of instruments and switches were in front of him and a canopy around him, but he was bound into the seat tightly. Rope crossed and recrossed his chest and arms. More rope cut into his wrists and his ankles, while even more was bound around his legs. It did not require genius to realize that he sat, absolutely secured, in the forward cockpit of the Tigre helicopter. The voice, accompanied by banging, came from the rear, electronics navigation officer's position. "Wake up! Wake up!" It droned on like a mantra. He managed to turn his head just enough to catch sight of the dark hair and attractive face, while her feet kept up their pounding on the back of the pilot's seat. "I'm here. I'm here. It's okay." His voice sounded slurred, and he could feel the parched dryness of his throat. He tried to get his head around so that he could see more, but it was impossible, so he concentrated on his restraints, which did not seem to give an inch. "Do something!" The woman was pleading. "For heaven's sake, do something!" "I'm a shade tired, okay?" Pushing with all his strength, Bond managed to reach some of the switches with his face, clocking them on with his nose, mouth, and forehead. Some of the instruments illuminated, and there was a whine as the engine began to spool up, the rotors chopping above them. A beeping noise attracted his attention, and with the ropes pressing into his flesh, causing extreme pain, he leaned forward to peer at the instrument concerned. It was a flashing display on the weapons control panel. In red, it flashed, "Delay launch in seconds to 17, 16, 15. Launch? He thought. Missiles? The chopper itself? The numbers moved on relentlessly, and Bond wondered if this was his personal countdown to death, for him and the young woman behind him. 7, 6, 5, 4. The whole cabin began to shake violently, and his ears popped as, with great streams of flame, a pair of missiles screeched off from under the stubby weapons bearing wings. The two missiles moved so fast that by the time he had taken in what was happening, they were flickering flames a mile or so in the distance, running low over buildings and the lights of St. Petersburg. Then, in tandem, they lifted upwards, slicing into the sky, crossing each other's trails. Noises still came from the weapons control panel. A high-pitched whine, followed by a growl and an urgent "deet, deet, deet" sound that he recognized and associated with a target acquisition warning. Eyes down again, and he saw another counter moving. One set of figures remained set at 003.109.001. That would be the target's position, and below it another series of numbers flowed, suddenly stopping at the same coordinates. 003.109.001. A match. And now he knew where the target was located. He was sitting in it. Far away, high in the sky to the left, the rockets had turned and were coming down like perfectly aimed arrows, pointing directly towards them. He could feel the sweat trickle from his hairline as he frantically looked for the one way of escape. He yelled back at the girl. "I need a square red button, probably lit up. Can you see it?" "There, to your right, to your right!" His eyes flicked over, and there it was, with the words, "Caution, eject," above it, and out of reach. With a final thrust, summoning all his strength and backing it up with a yell, he slammed his head towards the button and felt his right temple touch. Then the world changed again. The rotors howled, and they were thrown away from the helicopter. There was a massive thump from beneath the long cockpit as it was launched into the air, a one-piece cabin capsule which shot to almost 200 feet before parachutes were deployed. At the apogee of its surge upwards, the capsule seemed to hover, not moving in the air. And from below came the devastating explosion as the two missiles smashed into the frame of the helicopter, sending up a great fireball that, for a second, engulfed the capsule. The girl was screaming behind him, and he knew that his own mouth was open, but could not tell if it was wide in a silent scream or if he was also shrieking with fear. The capsule drifted down and hit the earth with a heavy, bone-jarring thud. It was several seconds before Bond realized that the jolt of the ejector rockets, combined with the thud of the landing, had loosened the ropes. He struggled, pushing and pulling until, finally, his arms were free, and then his hands, so that he was able to reach down and release his legs. He popped the canopy and began to climb out, and along to the rear compartment where the girl sat in shock, wild-eyed and white-knuckled, as she clung to the armrests of the seat. She was held down by straps with buckles at the back. Her arms were secured to the seat, and there was a tight strap around her ankles. He swung around, unlocking her section of the canopy, reaching out to her, swiftly undoing the straps. "Come on, let me help you out." He spoke gently, though he later realized that he was probably shouting as his ears were popping from the G-forces to which they had been exposed during the ejection. The girl grabbed his arm and he helped her to the soft earth. Almost as they touched the ground, she lashed out, kicking at his shins and trying to escape from him. "Stop!" He was shouting by now. "No! Let me go! Take your hands off me!" She clawed at him with her fingernails. "I'm trying to help you. Stop it now!" They were still grappling when the white spotlights of two helicopters nearly blinded them from above. Near at hand, they could hear the wail of sirens, and a voice on a loud hailer unit in one of the helicopters told them in Russian to stay exactly where they were. "If you move, you will be shot where you stand," the voice continued. "I think it would be a good idea to pretend we're one of these damned statues," Bond said, gently wrapping the trembling girl in his arms.